Hello everyone. Today I'd like to take a look at the basics of Unified Communications Manager's web interface. We're going to take a look at the way it's organized, where some of the key features and functionalities can be found, and kind of go from there. This is going to be a very high level overview of how the system is organized and where you can find a particular set of options as you're administering the system. To get started, navigate to https:// the IP address or host name of your system. When you get there, you'll be greeted with a screen that looks something like this. It will list the installed applications. On systems prior to version 12, you will potentially also see a Unified Communications Manager, I believe Prime Licensing Manager as well. So in this case, I'm running version 12. We no longer need Prime Licensing Manager, so I just have Unified Communications Manager and the self-care portal. We're going to want to hit Unified Communications Manager, and we'll be prompted with a screen that looks something like this, and then we log in. We're going to log in with the application administrator. This is the administrator of the call manager services, not the platform administrator. That's actually more operating system level types of things. So log in with the username and password that is set at this stage. We don't need to save the credentials. All right. If there are any system-wide warnings, they will show up right as you log in. In this case, I don't have a backup configured, and I also don't have emergency notifications and paging configured. This is something newer in, I believe, 11.5 and 12. We can ignore that for now, as this is a lab system. If you need to know some very high-level information about the system, you can see that here. Version number, as well as the hardware, or in this case, virtual hardware and specifications of the system. Starting at the top left, we have System, Call Routing, Media Resources, Advanced Features, Device, Application, User Management, Bulk Administration, and last but not least, a Help menu. Let's start with System. System parameters are just that. System, think of them as global parameters, so cluster-wide global parameters. So server, this is where we could go to see different Unified Communications Manager servers in our cluster. We can group them together in CM groups. There are NTP reference information, date time, so the format of the date and time information across the system. We have region information. I am skipping over a few of these. I just want to highlight some of the most important. Region information, this is how we set the codec between one phone and another. If they're in the same region, we might give them a higher bandwidth codec than if they were over a very low speed WAN link. Device pool, this is how we take a group of devices, perhaps at one location or perhaps one major set of functionality within a location. We can assign a device pool. There's other resources that are applied at a per device pool level as well. So device pools are configured in the system parameters. Device mobility, DHCP is typically not recommended to use the server for DHCP, but that is available here as well. LDAP is both important for authentication of users as well as directory search functionality. So knowing, linking this system with Active Directory, for instance, and being able to search for users as well as authenticate using that LDAP information as well. SAML single sign-on. This information, this feature is relatively new. This is for advanced authentication. There's location information, physical location, SRST. This is actually for that survivable remote site telephony. So our SRST points would be configured here. Enterprise parameters are overall settings for the entire enterprise, right? So there's a number of different things that can be configured in here, such as your interdigit timeout and things of that nature. There's a lot of different settings. Occasionally you'll be prompted via some documentation to come into enterprise parameters and actually make some changes here. Likewise, enterprise phone configuration. So if you want to apply a certain piece of generic configuration to all phones in the enterprise. Service parameters, so different services, for instance, the Unified Communications Manager service. There are some parameters here. There's some security settings, SIP trunk security profile, and phone security profile. These are actually in here as well, so occasionally you need to track down these settings. They are not under device, which is where I typically would think they should be, but just be aware that they are in the security settings under system. There is licensing. In 12.0 and later, licensing is actually moved to smart licensing, so you can configure that here under licensing management. Under call routing, this is where we actually route calls, we match patterns, so on and so forth. So there are dial rules. These are certain application dial rules. So for instance, you might have an application dial rule for Jabber, for instance. We have route filtering, route and hunt configuration. So those outbound route patterns can be configured here. SIP route patterns, this would be more most likely used when you configure video and SIP URI dialing. Class of control, this is the fundamental point to configure class of control. What devices are allowed to dial to where. This is where you could configure something to prevent people from calling internationally or things of that nature. There are matter codes, emergency locations. Translation pattern is a very important piece. This is how you take a call that is in one format and convert it to another. Say an outbound call is in a 7-digit format and it needs to be in 10. You can use a translation pattern to correct that. Call park, directed call park, call pickup groups, directory numbers, all of these are numbers of some sort, numbers or patterns. There's meet me, conferencing, some dial plan installation if you want to use a pre-canned dial plan, route plan reports, so if you wanted to get a whole bunch of information all in one report about the routing plan, transformations and other ways to actually manipulate called and calling party information, and a handful of other settings that we'll visit in later episodes. Advanced features. I missed media resources. Media resources would be resources that, things such as music on hold or video on hold, or if you need to transcode from one codec to another, or have some type of announcements. These are all media resources. This is the actual flow of media from either this system or another system to an endpoint. Conference bridging, those types of things. Advanced features, you probably won't have to do a whole lot under here for general and basic configuration. However, voicemail is under here as well. So your voicemail pilot, you will definitely want to know where those settings are. And another noteworthy item is VPN configuration. If you have VPN enabled phones, VPN settings are configured under advanced features. Device is probably where most day-to-day administrators spend the bulk amount of their time. There's CTI route points, gatekeepers, gateways, phones, trunks, all quote-unquote devices or endpoints on the system can be found here. Remote destinations would be things such as endpoints that are off the system, but you want to have some intelligent recognition of that device within the system itself. For instance, single number reach to a mobile phone. Device settings. There are a number of device settings here. Things from firmware to button layouts, soft keys, SIP profiles, common device configuration. So if you want to apply configuration to multiple devices based on either model number or by group of device. There's recording profiles, even wireless configuration if you have wireless phones in your environment. Applications, this is where you can access some plug-in applications for Unified Communications Manager. User management is also a place that I have personally spent a lot of time. This is where you can see the users, whether you manage users on system and have to create them in this section, or if they're imported from Active Directory, you can then go in here and apply rules such as group, security group. There are self-provisioning settings in here, number of different settings. You'll also go in here to link a user to a specific endpoint from both a licensing and a ease of use and directory standpoint. Bulk administration takes a lot of the device configuration and allows us to do it in large quantities. So for instance, if you have 1,000 phones to configure, you might be able to provision them using a spreadsheet imported into bulk provisioning as opposed to building each phone configuration manually. Likewise for gateways, mobility, call pickup groups, there's some phone migration functionality in here, directory URI configuration, and ultimately a job scheduler to help keep all of those tasks organized. There is a help tab. You can look for a general contents of document that can be pulled up. When you're on a specific page, you can actually get specifics about that page. So if we were configuring a hunt group, for instance, and hit this page, we can actually get hunt group information in context by clicking the This Page button under Help. A few other things to note. There is a master navigation drop down here. If you wanted to change major pieces of functionality, for instance, we are in Unified CM administration right now. Say we wanted to actually go to disaster recovery, we can do that, or OS administration. If it is a platform-oriented service, we will have to log in again. If it is still a UC, Unified Communications service, we can jump right over to it by selecting the service and then hitting go. Last but not least, when we're done working in Unified Communications Manager, we can select the Log Out button to log out of the system. Hopefully this has been a helpful introduction to the system. If you have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. Subscribe, and I hope to have some additional videos available in the near future. As always, thank you for watching, and have a good day.